He didn't want to destroy her. He just did not know how to survive without her. See, that's the line that no one wants to say out loud because it feels too close to excusing violence. But this episode is not about excuses. It's about urgency. It's about the men who weren't born cruel, but who were never taught how to live in the aftermath of emotional collapse. This is a story as old as heartbreak itself. A boy grows up believing love will save him. That if he's good enough, if he's impressive enough, if he's charming enough, someone will choose him, and then everything will make sense. He's told that love is the prize, and that without it, he's nothing. That his value lies in being wanted. And so when love doesn't arrive, or worse, when it's taken away, he doesn't just feel pain. He feels erased. He feels unmade and dehumanized. And if he has no language for that grief, if he's been taught that vulnerability is weakness and that sadness is shameful, then that pain doesn't just stay soft. That pain turns hard and turns bitter and turns violent. And this is how some men break. Not because they're inherently dangerous, but because they were taught that love is the only thing that could make them whole. And when it slips through their fingers, the emptiness feels unbearable. The first time he's ghosted, maybe he shrugs it off. But the fifth time, he starts to internalize it. And the 10th time, he believes there must be something inherently wrong with him. And eventually, it just stops being about the people who rejected him now, and it becomes about the world that will not see him. The tragedy begins when he stops seeing himself as well. And in that vacuum, he'll reach for anything to feel real or significant again. Whether it's power, whether it's control, whether it's anger or punishment, anything to prove that he still exists. And this isn't rare, it's just rarely spoken about. We see it in the headlines, we see it in the forums, we see it in the quiet desperation of men who can't admit how much it hurts to feel unwanted. You see, when Elliot Rodger left behind this manifesto that was detailing his rage before going ahead and murdering 6 people in Isla Vista, he didn't just express hatred, he expressed heartbreak. Not the soft, poetic kind. It was the kind that festers when grief has nowhere to go. And he wrote about rejection. He wrote about humiliation. He wrote about being overlooked and about how unfair it felt that others got to experience love while he remained invisible. It was vile, right? It was chilling. It was tragic. But underneath all of that, it was also familiar. Because if we're honest, we've all had moments, however brief they were, where rejection felt unbearable, right? Where loneliness clawed at our sense of self-worth, and where we wondered if we were fundamentally unlovable. Most of us, we never act on it per se, but some do. And it's not because they're monsters, it's because they were never taught how to survive emotional loss without actually destroying something or someone in the process. And we teach boys to pursue, right? But we rarely teach them how to lose. We train them to chase connection, but not how to sit with the pain of not being chosen. We tell boys that love is the answer, but we don't show them how to keep living when the answer never arrives. So they spiral, not always outwardly, but sometimes the violence turns inward through addiction or isolation or self-loathing or self-unaliving. But sometimes it also explodes. And then we act shocked. We ask, how could he do that? But we don't ask, what have we been teaching him about his worth, his identity, or his his right to feel. Because most male violence, I don't think it's about cruelty. It's about the pain that's been denied a voice for so long that it finds another way to speak. And that voice is often terrifying. It says, if I can't be loved, at least I'll be noticed. If I can't be wanted, I'll make you afraid of it and of me. If I'm nothing to you alive, maybe I'll matter to you once I've done something unforgettable. And that's how love turns lethal. Not because love is dangerous, but because we've made it the only acceptable source of male worth. We've created this culture where love isn't an experience anymore. It's a validation, a measurement, a scoreboard of sorts. And if you don't score, you don't exist. And this pressure isn't just external. It becomes internalized very early on. I mean, think about how boys are socialized. To win admiration, like through performance, right? Or to mask pain with indifference, or to treat affection as a reward and not as a right. Oh, these boys are rarely ever told that you're allowed to grieve. And you can still be valuable even when you're not chosen or wanted. You're not broken because someone didn't love you. And so when loss comes, they don't have the tools. They have triggers. And those triggers, when it's combined with shame and entitlement and a complete lack of emotional infrastructure, that's a tonic that becomes very volatile. That's what we're seeing play out again and again. It's not random evil. It's not inexplicable anger or rage. It's avoidable tragedy that's rooted in unmet emotional needs and an unprocessed grief. And if we really want to stop it, we have to stop pretending that this is someone else's problem. It's not just the incel community. It's not just fringe internet subcultures. This is every man who has been taught that if he's not chosen, he's disposable. If he's not successful in love, he has no self. And that if he's vulnerable, that he's less of a man. That's the script we have to rewrite. Because if we don't, if we keep telling men that they only matter when they're loved, we're going to keep losing them to a love that disappears. But let's get real about something quite uncomfortable. A lot of men are walking around with a silent equation in their heads. Love equals worth. No love equals no worth. And if that equation starts to feel true day after day, year after year, what happens? He doesn't just feel sad. He doesn't just feel disappointed. He starts to believe that he is nothing. That's not just emotional pain there. That's existential pain. And when you're in existential pain, you don't always make rational choices. You just want relief. For some, that relief comes in the form of self-medication. And for others, it comes in dissociation and distraction and denial. But for a few, it festers into vengeance. Because if your pain doesn't get empathy, it starts demanding attention. And when it doesn't get attention, it becomes resentment. And then when resentment goes unchecked long enough, it looks for someone to blame. And sometimes it's women. Sometimes it's the Chads. Sometimes it's the entire world. But the story is always the same. It goes like this. It says, I was hurt and no one cared. So now I'll make sure that they care. This is not justification. This is my roadmap of understanding so we can actually start interrupting this spiral before it ends in devastation. Because at the core of this is a wound that was never witnessed. You see, men are told that love is the reward for being desirable. But what if you don't feel desirable? What if What if you've been just overlooked and ignored and rejected your whole life? What then? It's hard not to internalize it, isn't it? I mean, you believe that you're unworthy. You think that something is fundamentally wrong with you. And when you try to fix it with a new look or a better job or a more interesting personality, and it still doesn't work, that shame deepens. And eventually you just stop trying. Not because you've given up on the connection that was possible, but because trying hurts too much. So you isolate, you retreat, you numb out. But the need doesn't go away. The hunger to be loved, it just gets twisted. It starts to sound like, if I can't be loved, maybe I can be feared. If I can't be chosen, maybe I can take control. And that is where the danger begins. Not with evil, but with this desperate attempt to matter. And most men who reach that point, they didn't start violence. They started invisible. And invisibility is the kind of pain that makes people do desperate things. This is what society, I believe, keeps missing. We assume that if a man doesn't ask for help, he doesn't need it. That if he doesn't cry, he's not hurting. That if he's quiet, he's okay. But so often that silence is the storm. It's where all the pain lives, unspoken, unprocessed, and unheard. And in that silence, the only voices that are left are the ones that confirm his worst fears. You're broken, and you'll always be alone. No one will ever love you. So take control, get even, make them notice. And that's how ideologies take root. That's how community forums become these echo chambers. That's how pain becomes policy and then action. He finds people who sound like him, who mirror his despair and who validate his rage, who offer him a story to make sense of it all. A story where he's not the problem. A story where he's been wronged. A story where he finally gets to be right. But the cost of that story is empathy. Because once he bought into the narrative that the world owes him something, that love was by right and its absence is an attack, he loses this ability to hold space for other people's pain, especially the pain of the women he believes that rejected him. And empathy becomes impossible when you believe that your pain is bigger than anyone else's humanity. That's when things turn. That's when the breakdown becomes explosive. That's when the quiet suffering turns lethal. And we say again, why didn't anyone see this coming? But maybe a better question is this. Why do we keep raising men who don't know how to lose love without losing themselves? I mean, we can change this. But it's not with slogans. It's not with shame. It's not with silence. We change this by creating a culture where emotional literacy is taught and it's modeled and it's expected from boyhood onwards, where heartbreak isn't ridiculed and where grief is not punished, where love is something to be shared, not earned, and perhaps where rejection is survivable, not an identity-shattering experience. Because the truth is, love will come and go. People will leave and romance will fail. You will get ghosted and dumped and betrayed. But that's life. That's love. But if we don't teach men how to metabolize those losses, they will keep mistaking this absence of love as absence of self. And that's the lie that leads to the tragedy, because no one becomes dangerous just from being unloved. They become dangerous when they believe that being unloved makes them nothing. So the work isn't just about helping men get more love. It's about helping them remember their worth when love is not there. It's only then that we can break the link between pain and power, between heartbreak and harm, between rejection and rage. Only then can we build something that is different. So let's talk about what it really means to grieve as a man. Because grief is at the very center of this conversation, I believe. Not just grief, like it's the grief over lost relationships, the grief over identity and self-worth and imagined futures of what could be and your dignity. But you see, most men don't know how to grieve. It's not because they can't, it's because they were never taught how to. They were taught, however, to move on, to stay composed, to turn it into motivation, to go to the gym, to level up and to act like it didn't hurt. And if that doesn't work, well, they're just supposed to try harder. Grief, though, that isn't allowed to be felt doesn't just go away. It calcifies, it warps the lens through which a man sees the world. And he doesn't just see loss as a normal part of life. He sees it as a confirmation that the universe is stacked against him, that he's cursed, that he was never meant to be loved in the first place. And that belief, it changes him. It makes him defensive and then cold and then bitter and then angry until eventually his identity is no longer built around what he hopes for or wants to experience, but around what he's convinced that he'll never have. And that is when he starts to feel powerful in his numbness. Like, I don't care anymore, and I don't even want love. But that's a lie. He does want it. He just doesn't want something that keeps hurting him over and over. So he rewrites the script. He says, women are shallow. Love is a scam, and feelings are weakness. Connection is just manipulation. And now he's not just hurting, but he's building an entire worldview to protect himself from ever feeling that hurt again. But worldviews that are built on unprocessed pain are always unstable. They collapse under pressure, and they hurt other people as well. And they cut the person off from the very thing that they needed in the first place, which was never dominance, never control, never even sex. It was to be known, to be safe, to be held in a place that said, you don't have to earn this. But he doesn't believe that place even exists anymore. Maybe he never did. And so what does he do? He isolates. He lurks online. He finds other men who sound like him, who mock women, who twist heartbreak into superiority, and who make contempt feel cool, who make empathy feel like betrayal. Because to still want connection, it just feels weak now. Like it feels like losing, like going back to the same people who left you starving in the first place. And so he says, forget them. I don't need anyone. I'm better alone. I'm not playing this game anymore. And yet he's still scrolling and he's still watching and he's still aching because the wound never healed. It just went underground. And from underground, it controls everything. See that wound? It shows up in ways that he talks to women, in the ways that he avoids eye contact, in the way that he jokes about the things that used to matter to him once upon a time. They show up in ways that he gets angry at the world for not reading his pain telepathically. And when someone does offer him care, well, he doesn't trust that. He thinks it's pity or manipulation or a cruel trick. Because nothing soft feels safe anymore. He's only at home in the hardness now. in certainty, in cynicism. And in that hardness, connection becomes impossible. So he acts out, or he withdraws, or he lashes out at the very people who could have loved him if he hadn't pushed them away first. This is what it means when we say love has turned lethal. It didn't happen overnight. It happened after years and years of never feeling safe enough to admit just how much he wanted to be loved, to be seen, to be acknowledged, to be known. And we're not innocent in this. See, we've glamorized this emotional repression. We've joked about men who are heartless. We've rolled our eyes at their clumsy attempts at connection, right? And we've told them implicitly and explicitly that they must earn care through their charisma, through their confidence and competence. And then we blame them when they break under the weight of it all. So, how do we change this? By naming what's really happening, for starters. A lot of male violence isn't just about power, it's about loss, about longing that is turned sour, about tenderness that was never allowed to live in the open. And our job, yours and mine, is not to excuse the harm, but it's to interrupt it, to catch the signs before someone implodes. And that means asking men around you how they're really doing. Not just once, and not just when it's convenient, but regularly and persistently and honestly. It means modeling emotional vulnerability so that others feel safe enough to try it as well in your presence. It means refusing to laugh off the pain, refusing to brush off bitterness, refusing to normalize the numbness. Because none of that is strength. Real strength is sitting with your heartbreak. Real strength is choosing softness when you could hide behind the rage. Real strength is staying open when everything in you wants to shut down. And real love, it doesn't erase the pain. It makes it survivable. If more men believed that was possible, we'd probably live in a different world. A world where rejection doesn't just break people, and where grief doesn't turn people toward violence, and where love, even where it disappears, doesn't also take away your sense of self-worth with it. That world is possible, but it's only possible if we stop lying about how much this all hurts. There's a moment in every downward spiral where something could have interrupted it. Maybe could have been a look, or a question, a space, a person who says, I see you, and you're not crazy. You're not alone. But most of us, we don't recognize those moments until after the damage is done. We replay the footage, we analyze the signs, we mourn what could have been prevented potentially. And we promise ourselves we'll do better next time. But what if this is the next time? Like now? What if you're not too late? What if someone in your life is inching towards collapse right now? And they don't need your perfection, they just need your presence. You don't have to fix them. You don't have to say something brilliant. You just have to stay and to notice and to reach out and to ask again when they brush you off. Because that moment, the one where you ask again, that might be the only interruption that they are receptive to. And if you're listening to this thinking, oh, that's me, I'm the one who's drowning, then let me speak to you. You don't need to carry this alone. You were never supposed to carry this alone. You were not weak for wanting to be loved. You were not pathetic for hoping to be chosen. You were not wrong for believing that someone would stay. But you were misled if you were taught that your worth only exists in response to someone else's desire. You existed before anyone loved you. You matter even if no one chooses you today. And your pain doesn't make you dangerous, it makes you human. The danger only begins when we stop believing that we're allowed to be human. When we armor up as a result, when we shut down, when we decide that the only way to feel powerful is to make someone else feel small. But that's not power. That's panic wearing a mask. And you don't need to wear it anymore. Because here's the truth. You are allowed to want love without it defining you. You are allowed to be disappointed without turning cruel. You're allowed to feel the weight of rejection without letting it corrupt your heart. You are not the sum of who's wanted you. You are not the product of your dating history. You're not a failed man because love has been hard for you. You're just someone who is in the midst of pain. And pain that is witnessed can heal. Pain that is named can loosen. Pain that is shared can actually shrink in its potency. So share it with a friend, with a therapist, with someone who's earned your trust and your truth. Not to get a fix and not to be saved, but just to remind yourself that you're still here, that you still have a choice, that you can still feel. Because when love turns lethal, it's often because someone believed there were no more choices, or there were no more paths, or there were no more options. But there are. Even now, in this moment, even right here, as you're listening to me, there is still the path of honesty that you can access, the path of connection. It's a path of slow and awkward and imperfect experiences as you return to yourself. And if you've been on the receiving end of someone's pain that has turned violent, let me say this to you. It wasn't your fault, and it was never your fault. Someone else's inability to cope with loss is not your responsibility. Someone else's collapse is not your burden to hold. You did not cause their pain. You simply maybe reminded them of it. And they made a choice, a tragic one. But now we get to make different choices. We get to build a world now where pain is allowed to speak before it explodes, where boys are raised to grieve, not just pursue, and where men are seen as fully human even when they're heartbroken. We get to raise the standard of how we talk about love, about rejection and resilience, and not just with men, but with everyone. Because love is never guaranteed, is it? But dignity should always be guaranteed. And if we build lives that are rooted in dignity and not just in desire, then we can survive the losses. We can move through heartbreak without losing ourselves. We can learn that rejection is not the end, but instead an invitation to become someone more whole. This is how we stop love from turning lethal. It's not by blaming, it's not by shaming, but instead by reconnecting. One honest conversation at a time. One brave person who can feel their pain instead of passing it on. One culture that refuses to treat silence as a strength. I mean, we can do this. We have to, because the cost of not doing it is too high. And the signs, they're already here. So let's not ignore them again. You got this.